My ideas for the District of Saxonville. What is Saxonville? Saxonville is a historic district in Framingham, Massachusetts. The history of Saxonville is it was one of the earliest areas of settlement in Framingham. It retains a high number of historic buildings. It also includes the Saxonville Mills Complex, a major Framingham industry throughout the 19th and early 20th century, and is a significant landmark here. What is the problem in Saxonville? The problem in Saxonville is that they want to keep the history of it alive, but they also want to economically develop. These two things contract themselves because the history of an area is not really going to make any money, but if you are adding new stuff to an area, then you aren't keeping the history there. Why is the history so important? The reason that the mills are so important to the town is because it is a historic 19th century mill village at the heart of Saxonville. Basically, in the district of Saxonville, the heart and center of the whole area is the mills, is what we used to run off, and it is just the center of all the streets like Water, Central, Elm, and Concord Street. Why does it need to develop though? A lot of the stores inside the mills have been shut down or are no longer in business. The mills need to economically develop to stay relevant in this time of the world. For example, until 1966, a dairy company operated a fleet of delivery trucks that delivered fresh milk and dairy products to the homes around areas. Sometime around the 1967, the dairy company ceased operations. This was due to the change in the way people lived, because people were no longer getting milk delivered. Instead, they were going to grocery stores or farms or wherever and getting it for themselves. So many of the stores are not relevant with the times and they get shut down, meaning they're not making any money for the town or themselves. Why is it a problem if it develops? The problem is that we are in a historic district, and is that anything that gets changed must be approved by the History District Councils. So this only applies to the outside of buildings and not the inside of buildings, which means that it's hard for a place to develop when the outside of an old brick building must stay an old brick building. But this also means that there are no rules on what they can or can't do on the inside. For example, they can renovate the inside however they would like, but if they would like to change the materials or something like that, they would have of the outside of the building, they would have to get it approved by the HDC first. Solutions. One way to meet in the middle and keep the history of the district alive, but also develop economically, would to keep all the buildings how they are and not make any new buildings, but just fix the insides and change these however they are needed to start a business in them. Would that work is the question. Well, a good example of this is the Saxonville Cafe. This store was just recently opened in the Saxonville Mills, but they did nothing to the outside of the shop. So the history of the building is still there. They just renovated the inside to make it modern and to make it into a coffee shop, which now allows the town and them to get money, and the history of the mills is still there. Continuing off the last slide, if all the empty buildings did this in the mills and just renovated the insides to fit modern times, but kept the outside of the mills the same, then you have the opportunity to make both money and keep people happy because the history is still alive. More ways you can keep the history. By setting up a history center in the district, then there will be a place where the history of the district can be learned and also shared. So this will not only keep the history alive, but it will also allow it to be shared and learned to more people. These are just my ideas on how to make both sides of Saxonville happy by keeping the history of the district but also growing economically. Thank you.